Good day, everyone. Today, I will be discussing the framework of corporate social responsibility or CSR communication. CSR communication is an essential aspect of modern organizations because it undermines how companies present their social, environmental, and ethical responsibilities to the public. And in this presentation, I will walk you through the key components of CSR communication, explain why it is important, and discuss how organizations can communicate their CSR initiatives effectively and responsively. At the end of this presentation, the audience should be able to explain CSR communication, describe the CSR communication framework, identify key stakeholders or audiences, recognize communication channels and tools, understand factors affecting CSR communication, and explain its outcomes such as trust, engagement, and others. For the overview of CSR communication framework, CSR is not just about sharing information. It is a structured process that involves message content, communication channels, stakeholders, and outcomes. The framework shows that communication is influenced by both the organization and the audience, and that effective CSR communication is something that leads to measurable internal and external results. The first component of the framework is message content, as you can see in this figure. And it explains that CSR communication must clearly present the organization's initiatives, its commitment to social responsibility, and the actual impact of its actions. It is also important that these messages align with the company's values or what we call fit. If CSR activities are not aligned with the organization's identity, stakeholders may question their authenticity. The second component is communication channels. The communication channel shows that organizations use multiple platforms to communicate CSR, such as CSR reports, websites, advertising, and media coverage. It is important to choose the right channel depending on the audience. And for example, formal reports are useful for investors, while social media may be more effective for the general public. Therefore, it depicts that communication is ongoing and not a one time activity. Another key component is the audience or stakeholders. It emphasizes understanding that the audience is essential in CSR communication. It states that communication must be tailored depending on who receives the message. Stakeholders can be classified as internal, such as employees and management, and external, such as customers, investors, communities, and regulators. Each group has different expectations. For example, investors require detailed data, while employees need motivation and involvement. Hence, organizations must define and cluster their audience before communicating CSR. It explains that communication should be based on what stakeholders need to hear, how they prefer to receive information, and when it should be delivered. Effective communication builds goodwill. And while poor communication, it can damage reputation. Thus, CSR communication must be strategic and audience centered. The framework also includes contingency factors, as you can see in this figure, and it influences how CSR communication works. It includes stakeholder characteristics, such as their interest, level of support, and company characteristics, such as reputation, industry, and communication strategy. Okay, now let's proceed with the final component of CSR communication, which is the communication outcomes. Internally, effective CSR communication leads to awareness, and trust among employees. It can result in customer loyalty, stakeholder advocacy, and increased investor confidence. The outcomes of CSR communication definitely contributes not only to social good but also to organizational success. And you have to know that CSR communication is not one way. Organizations must engage stakeholders through tools such as blogs, surveys, meetings, and online platforms because feedback gives organizations the opportunity to improve their CSR strategies and, of course, ensure that stakeholders feel involved. This reinforces the idea that CSR communication is a continuous and interactive process. There are also tools and strategies for CSR communication. Internally, organizations can use intranet systems, meetings, and newsletters to inform employees, while externally, they can use CSR reports, websites, advertisements, and events to reach stakeholders. The digital tools such as blogs and social media, they are also important because they give opportunity for real-time engagement and feedback. Well, what are the key insights from this CSR framework? Um, the key takeaway from the framework is that effective CSR communication depends on delivering the right message to the right audience using the right channel. That's important. And when these elements are aligned, organizations can achieve positive outcomes such as trust, loyalty, and engagement. This illustrates how what is the strategic importance of CSR communication in modern organizations. And of course, uh, CSR communication must be strategic, audience centered, and outcome driven. Okay, so that concludes my presentation, and thank you very much for listening.